Hello, Caitlin.
Hello, Andy.
Welcome to Andy's Library. Caitlin and I will be reviewing Hamlet,
And
which is just that part of this book.
look what I brought here with me.
Oh,
My
that
prop.
is excellent. I feel very inspired.
Yeah, that was the goal.
So, I don't know if I ever read Hamlet before. I know you read it before.
Yeah,
This is
recently.
yours.
So I read it for the first time, I don't know, half a year ago, maybe less than that.
Okay.
And so this was my second time reading it because I don't think this was one that I ever had to read in high school.
Yeah, I don't think
Not that I
so. I don't think
remember.
I had to read it in high school either. And I did do some YouTube like reviews and stuff while I was reading it, and they kept talking about how long this play is.
Oh, really?
Yeah, and I don't know, I guess I just haven't read a lot of plays because I was a little shocked that it was over.
Yeah, like I never felt like it was very long.
Yeah. Plus the fact
I
that
mean,
it's like I'm reading it out of this book, so
oh yeah. So you don't even like know how many pages you have left. You can't like
right,
eyeball it. But
right.
I
It's
guess I
like
just compare it to like novels that I read. So it just seems short compared to
yeah,
that.
I think I was doing the same. So yeah, this was just like what 40 pages or something or 30 pages. It wasn't that much. Well, it wasn't even that much. But I do have to say, I do have one like question, and maybe this is a spoiler alert. Who is in charge of Denmark at the end of this play? Like, doesn't everybody just die? I was kind of shocked that at the end of this, in a page, everyone just dies.
Yes, I was actually going to ask you, like, can we spoil things in this video? Is this going to be like,
It might be a little late,
yeah, everybody
but
dies?
everybody dies. I thought,
Um,
so who's like
so I
who's
don't
in
know how
charge
to
of
say his
Denmark?
name, but the Prince of Norway, I think,
Oh, so wait,
Fortinbras.
Fortinbras is in charge now.
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah, I was kind of surprised. I mean, it wrapped up pretty quickly with Hamlet just going at it, and then everybody getting murdered, and then at the end, Hamlet's like, "Horatio, tell my story," which is one of the funniest lines my brother-in-law ever said. So, I never knew he was quoting Hamlet at the time.
That's
But
very
yeah,
sophisticated that he was quoting Hamlet.
yeah, he's got pretty highbrow humor. So I was kind of shocked, and then I thought, well, who's in charge of Denmark now? Like that seemed to.
Yeah, I don't know if I'm correct. I took it that the Prince of Norway, since he stumbled
Okay,
upon it, he's like, well, I guess I'll take this from
I'll take it
here.
back. Yeah, yeah, I've got it. I've got this.
I think I can do better.
Yeah, I'll take it from here. Yeah, that was, and my we just started watching House of Dragons. So I'm reading this while we're watching House of Dragons, and all I could think between the two is, why do you want to be the king of anything?
It just seems like it complicates your life a lot.
Yeah, like what are they fighting about? It just seems, I don't, this is terrible. Like nobody
Yeah.
likes each other, everybody's spying on each other. Um, and then I was a little shocked that Hamlet sent his two friends and wrote a letter like, oh, by the way, whoever gets this letter, kill my two college friends.
Yeah, like I guess he kind of decided he didn't want them to be his friends anymore.
That seemed really harsh.
And yeah, that actually kind of like confused me because yeah, the king and queen brought those two in order to kind of like almost spy on Hamlet and get information out of him and why he's upset. But they were upfront with Hamlet, like when he questioned them about it, they did say like, yeah, that's what they brought us on for.
Yeah, that's
But
right.
then he seemed to still be kind of like upset with them.
Yeah.
So, well, I guess they knew that they were taking him to his death. So actually,
Oh,
I guess it
okay.
is kind of, you know,
Oh,
yeah, at
that's
that
true.
point,
I
I
guess
guess I
they
would
did
be
know
upset.
that. Okay, that actually makes sense. I hadn't thought about that.
Yeah,
That actually makes sense.
as I'm speaking, it kind of,
Yeah, so they were escorting him. That makes sense. Um, I do have to say, when I was reading this, I first started reading it and then like really being very particular that I was making sure I understood that every word, like I was looking at, but then after a while, that was making me more confused. I was having trouble following the flow when I was really trying to be particular. So instead, I just read every paragraph like once or twice through and then went back through and read it again. And after a while, I felt like I'm becoming bilingual
yes,
in, and I could see through and I could actually understand what I was reading.
yeah. I felt the same way. And it was kind of back and forth with me though. Like, I would read one scene and feel like I understood everything that just happened. Well, I never understood everything that was happening, but I felt like, okay, I know what just happened in this scene. And then I would get to the next scene and be like, I I have no idea. But I would always look at after I read a scene, then I would go online and find a translation and just to check to make sure I'm understanding or to just figure out what was going on. And
Hmm.
that's super helpful.
I like that too. And I really enjoyed the humor, some of the humorous parts. And I thought I was a little shocked by some of the humor. Some of the humor seemed a little vulgar, and I was pretty surprised. Like, am I understanding that right? And then when I would watch the YouTube videos, I'm like, oh wow, yeah, this is some like kind of risque humor. But I thought
Yeah.
it was really funny. And I remember, which also made it seem even more tragic, that this, he's like young, he's funny, he's tortured, he's in this horrible position. So it added to the tragedy in
Yeah.
my mind.
Yeah.
Um, and then I also, a theme that I really up on was this theme of uh, everybody ending up as food for maggots,
Yeah.
regardless
Yeah, I
of
wrote
where.
that down as um one of the themes that I also came across. How did I say it? That death humbles even the most great.
Hmm.
Like
Yeah,
these great leaders end up as food for peasants,
yeah.
basically.
And the one thing, I guess the one, was it the gravedigger said that even end up being like the corks in the bottom of um, kegs of beer or whatever.
Yeah.
Um, and that this quote, we fat all creatures else to fat us, and we fat ourselves for maggots. Like,
It's great imagery.
yeah, but just the thought, and then with the gravedigger, all of his um, discussions, and then, or all of his like jokes or whatever, but it all came back to that: no matter how great you are, you're still just a skull. No matter what you did in life, it all passes by. And I think he also made a comment, um, something along the lines of, none of these lawyers took this stuff with them to the grave or took their actions with them to the grave. So I thought, I just loved that theme, that all this fighting and all this you know competitiveness, it amounts to nothing. Like,
Yeah.
if your life is poorly lived, you're going to end up in a in a pile of a bunch of dead bodies and in a bad duel.
And the fish is going to you.
Yeah. So I thought that but I really liked reading this a lot. I really
So
enjoyed this play.
I really liked reading it this second time around and reading it with like a more critical mind and like picking up on themes. The biggest theme that I wanted to mention that I was picking up on is the fickleness of the human heart. I just want to read some quotes that I think point to this. Polonius is talking to Ophelia here about how, Hamlet is in love with her, like saying all these things about how he's in love with her. And he said, I do know when the blood burns, how prodigal the soul lends the tongue vows. These blazes, daughter, giving more light than heat, extinct in both, even in their promise, as it is in making, you must not take for fire. I love that quote. And
Hmm.
let me see. This one is so when those actors come in and do that play, the one who's playing the king says, I do believe you think what now you speak, but what we do determine, oft we break. Purpose is but the slave to memory, of violent birth, but poor validity.
Yeah, I don't know that I highlighted that, but I remember that line.
Yeah. And then I just have one more. This is the king is saying this. Uh, that we would do, we should do when we would, for this would changes and hath abatements and delays as many as there are tongues, or hands, or accidents.
Yeah.
But I just really noticed that like this was something Hamlet was struggling with because, he was so upset over his father's death. And then his ghost comes to him telling him he was murdered and like asking for revenge. And Hamlet he's so on board, like he desires revenge, he wants it, and yet as time passes, he realizes he's not going through with it.
Hmm.
And he just like starts really questioning himself and seeing himself as a coward because he's not going through with his intentions of in that moment he was so set on it.
Hmm. Yeah,
Yeah.
and I feel like that is like Hamlet's kind of, it's a very dramatic, embodiment of what we all go through. Like we all make these big pronouncements or these big decisions, and if you don't act on them quickly, or if you don't take that first step to act on these decisions, you lose that momentum.
Yeah, like yeah, I
I
found it really
really,
relatable.
yeah, I really did. I thought it was, I agree. That it was so, um, and I think I saw something about everybody gets so frustrated with Hamlet because he just keeps vacillating back and forth. But it's like, but that's what being human is. And, he was wrestling with some pretty big decisions. So it's kind of, that's part of, yeah, just being a human and making a
Yeah,
decision that in the heat of the moment, in the heat of the moment of seeing your father's ghost.
yeah, when that happens.
Yeah. Well, and also
um
the woman, the part when you just said about that fickleness, I highlighted this, and this is like the play, the actress playing the queen, or I guess it was an actor back then, saying, both here and hence pursue me lasting strife. If once I be a widow, ever I be a wife. So that's also like a little fickle nature that, she's, I will never marry again. And then
yeah.
like a couple of lines later, actual queen says, the lady doth protest too much. It's almost, she's already like what, 2 months after her husband dies, and she's like, oh,
Moving on.
moving on. But even in the beginning, there was some humor around that where I think Hamlet says something about they used the same food for the father's funeral that they did for the wedding feast.
Yeah,
It seemed like there was some humor in the beginning, which did make it seem more tragic.
yeah.
Um, And then another theme that I like kind of spoke to me a lot was when both the king, the new king, and the queen, when they're both feeling regret about murdering Hamlet's father. And I think, and I did highlight this, where the king says, may one be pardoned and retain the offense. So it's like, can you say you're sorry and ask forgiveness, but still hold on to everything you got because of what you did?
Yeah, like is that really true repentance if you're still like keeping all the benefits of what you did?
Yeah. Yeah. So that really spoke to me, like, okay, well, if you're really saying you're sorry, are you still gonna keep acting on, yeah, all the benefits or whatever you got out of what you did?
Yeah.
And again, I felt like that's personal to everyone, that applies to everybody, not just royalty, but
Yeah. Yeah, that's something about Shakespeare. I feel like he really gets human beings.
hmm
I feel like that's why his plays are still what they are.
yeah. And I did see Harold Bloom talking about Shakespeare. I did watch a couple of his YouTube videos, and one thing he says was reading things that are mediocre really doesn't do anybody any good. I thought, I am very glad that I sat down and read Hamlet, because it is not mediocre. It's really hard to read, but it's beautiful. I mean, after a while I couldn't believe how much of it rhymed. Like, I know that like so much of it's poetry, but then after a while I'm like, oh wow, I guess it is
Oh.
poetry. This is all rhyming. And just how vivid the characters were, and how the language was so ornamental. Like, it was just such, I don't know, it was just such beautiful writing.
Yeah.
And I thought, yeah, this is why you read extraordinary things.
One thought that I kept having as I was reading it was like, it almost feels like the Bible in the sense that you every time you read the Bible, you're getting new things out of it, and like you can never exhaust like what
hmm
you're learning. And like as I was reading this Hamlet and like writing down all the themes I was picking up on and like what it was making me think about, I was like, I feel like I could read this over and over and like get something different out of it each time.
Yeah, I agree. And I really felt like the one speech, and it is of Polonius, when he gives this speech to his daughter, the one about uh, it ends up with like, to neither a borrower nor a lender be, and this above all to thine own self be true. I sort of thought parts of this were from the Bible. Like, as I was reading this, his speech that he gave to Ophelia, I was kind of thinking, all right, I thought like at least half of that was out of the Bible. I did not realize that was Shakespeare. But I felt like that's the kind of speech you could read over and over. Like, you
Yeah.
could read that little monologue over and over, because there was so much in it. Like, don't speak everything you think. Make sure that you have good friends, and that, and I just thought it was such a
Yeah.
great passage.
It really sounds
That,
like Proverbs.
yeah, I really did think, I'm like, okay, thought that was biblical. And actually, there was I did watch either a YouTube or maybe it was a TikTok, where an English professor was challenged to see whether or not the line was from Taylor Swift or from Shakespeare, and he did not get them all right, not even by a long shot.
Taylor
So
Swift
Taylor
is an
Swift,
amazing writer.
yeah, I mean, she's on the level with Shakespeare and apparently the Bible too. Like, they're all three.
Wow.
You could have trouble telling which
God,
quote.
Shakespeare, Taylor Swift.
We're gonna get tons of comments after that little.
That might be blasphemy.
We might have to learn to edit some of these videos. But I think that I love that point about like returning to Shakespeare and reading parts of it over and over, because he does really speak to the human condition, especially some of these more tortured characters like Hamlet and Ophelia,
Yeah.
and not just the annoying ones like Polonius.
Does he call him like a rat or something?
Yeah, he did get a little bit irritating towards the end.
He really did. And I wanted to ask you, like, did you like Hamlet? It sounds like you do like him.
Yes, I did like him.
I
I
liked
mean,
him.
yeah, I know
I
that.
mean, he's flawed
Yes,
for sure, but we've talked about this before. That's kind of like what we like.
yes, so he was dark, he had some flaws. And now I do understand why he sent his two college friends to their deaths. So I guess I'm a little more forgiving of that part of it. But I do like how much he struggled with these decisions. And I do like the fact that he, just like us, isn't 100% sure of every decision he makes and really overthinks and tortures himself about some of these decisions. I mean, on a much bigger scale, but what we go through
Yeah,
daily.
I agree.
Yeah. So I'm going to give Hamlet a pretty high rating.
I gave it I think I gave it 4 stars only because I like Macbeth better and that's 5 stars. So I felt like I had to give it lower since I don't like it as much.
I will have to read Macbeth, I guess.
I really like that one because it's really dark.
Okay. But I like Hamlet because he just seems like, yeah, so tortured. But I guess Macbeth is also a tragedy, so I'm sure there's some tortured souls in that also.
Love tragedies. My favorite.
So I would say I'm going to give Hamlet a 5 out of 5, and I will read it again. And yeah, maybe Macbeth's my next one.
It's a good Halloween read.
Oh, perfect.
Definitely read that around Halloween. But
All
yeah.
right, that's kind of perfect then. All right, so anybody want to add some comments in below about Hamlet? Sorry, there were tons of spoilers in this review. And maybe our next review, Macbeth, will well, I'm sure there'll be spoilers in that too.
Just deal with it.
Yeah. Yeah. So like and subscribe and comment.
See ya.
Bye.